Jazz on my mind, coast to coast. Broadcasting live from the Paradise Mall, Wilmington, Delaware. I'm Howard Watson, and here's your host, Richard Blackwell.
Welcome to Jazz on My Mind. Thank you, Howard. Coast to coast, I'm Richard Blackwell. This is the show that is dedicated to jazz lovers around the world. Every Wednesday night at 10 p.m., we bring you jazz events from Los Angeles to New York, along with performances and jazz chats with the legends, current and upcoming jazz stars. And get ready, you jazz heads. Tonight, back by popular demand, we've got that video performance by saxophone great Vince LaDeer. It was on 2 weeks ago, and I've been flooded with calls for wanting for us to show it again. So that's coming up a little bit later on. Also tonight, we're going to have a jazz chat with a former radio personality here in Wilmington, Delaware, Mr. Maurice Sims. We're also going to chat with saxophone great Mr. Larry Unthank. But first, from the Council of Jazz Advocates, let's welcome Mr. and Mrs. Fleming to Jazz on My Mind. Welcome to the show, you two.
Thank you.
Come on down a little bit. Slide up down here. Okay. Mrs. Fleming, good to see you again. Mr. Fleming, good to see you also.
Good to see you too, Richard.
I'm glad you two could come on the show because tonight we're going to talk about a big event that's going to be happening October 29th here in Wilmington, Delaware, and it's a tribute to music great Mr. Robert Boise Lowery. And it's going to be put on by the Council of Jazz Advocates.
That's right.
Mrs. Fleming, let me start with you first of all.
Mm-hmm.
Having this wonderful tribute to Boise Lowery is long overdue. And as we know that Boise Lowery was a great musical instructor of some of the greatest jazz musicians that are performing today. He was a great spirit, wonderful teacher, and a good friend to a lot of people. Do you think this is a wonderful idea to have this for Boise?
Oh, yes, I do. It's long overdue. And I would like to say that I remember him being down on 7th and Church, and I took my children there. One was playing violin, the other one was playing the guitar and the clarinet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they got a good start from him. Yes, he did.
Well, Mr. Fleming, I mean, when you say that name, Boise Lowery, to anyone here in the Wilmington, Delaware area, his name is held with high reverence.
It certainly is. And you know, Boise was a great teacher, but yet he was also an individualist. By that I mean, he had a way of teaching. Sometimes his students didn't understand what he was trying to say. Mm-hmm. But he taught a person according to that person's personality and what he thought they could do. It wasn't just, you know, sharps and flats and A minor or whatever you want to say. Mm-hmm. He had an individual approach to every student that he had, whether it was a singer, guitar, drummer, whatever. He taught everything.
That's right.
And he taught the basics, but he had a cardinal rule that each individual needed individual attention from him. Mm-hmm. A lot of times the guys didn't understand what he was trying to tell them, but later on in life they said, this is what Boise was trying to tell me. Right.
Now, we're going to first continue to talk about Boise, the person, the musician, and then we're going to talk about the event coming up October 29th. Now, Boise Lowery, when you say that name, so many people have been influenced by him. Do you remember one of the few times that you had a chance to spend some time with Boise, Mrs. Fleming? Do you remember anything that happened or any conversations that you may have had with Boise over the years?
Well, I know he was a humble person, and he was a great listener to people. You know, he didn't always want to be being in the limelight, but you know, if you had something to ask him, he would certainly explain it to you and explain it to you well. I'm not a musician, so you know.
What about you, Mr. Fleming? Any conversations or times that you may have may remember that you had with Mr. Boise?
Well, over the years, I can remember speaking to Boise several times. On Sunday, he used to have his big band out to a place called the Forum. You local people here would know what I'm talking about. And but talking, I think, mainly with his students, everybody held him in the highest of regard.
That's right. That's what I hear.
And when you said Boise, it was almost like you could almost see the angelic arc above the heads,
Right.
talking about Boise. That just had the stronger personality, and he was a great guy, but he's also a stern taskmaster.
That's what
too.
I heard.
Yes, he was, and sometimes, as I said before, the artists didn't understand what he was trying to tell them, but it came through in later years. He had that knack of just looking at a person, and maybe he might want to play the trumpet. He might say, I think you might be a clarinetist. Yeah, stuff like that. And the guy said, but I want to play so-and-so. Okay, but let's try something else too.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, the guys would understand, or the ladies, as the case may be. I think my daughter was with him the longest. She played clarinet. And Boise thought, that she had talent on the clarinet. Unfortunately, she came out of high school and went to college, and that sort of fell by the wayside. But he never turned anyone away. He never said, well, you don't have the talent. He said, let's see what you can do. And these were the words that I got from, talking to the various musicians, around town and along the eastern seaboard. I like to jokingly say that anybody that set foot, slept here overnight, walked through, Boise taught them.
Yeah. Well, we know that, and I call Wilmington the jazz capital of the world, because to me it is. If you want jazz, this is where you need to be. There's a lot of things, a lot of rich history, and jazz is about history. When you talk about jazz, jazz in a lot of ways helped mold this country.
It did.
Because when you look at a lot of the great jazz performers, such as Louis Armstrong, you look at Lena Horne, Sarah Vaughan, Frank Sinatra, they are great historians as well. They have done a lot for this country with their music and with their humanitarian situations as well. So that's a beautiful thing. So jazz has a lot to offer to me, other than its music. It's about the culture and the history.
Well, you also have to remember that jazz is this country's classical music.
That's right.
All the music that had been played in the past came from Europe or whatever. But jazz, the blues, gospel, whatever you want to say, all came from here, and it all came from our ancestors.
Right.
So when you talk about jazz, that encompasses a lot of different types of music.
Yes.
But it's you want to call it soul music or whatever you want to call it, jazz. Of course, now jazz is so many different types of jazz that.
True. Cool jazz, smooth jazz.
When you mention jazz now, you'd have to say, I prefer the straight ahead.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that still around.
That's right. That's right.
Now, both of you two are on the Council of Jazz Advocates.
Correct.
You two have been so involved in that organization for many years, and I know the council has to be grateful to both of you two for your contributions that you have given to the Council of Jazz Advocates.
Yes. Well, it started back in 1993 at the home of Tommy Rhine, which is no longer with us. And from that, we had the first affair we had was at Sammy and Cherry Congo's in Elkton. And we just had a great sellout. We had over 200 people. They were sitting everywhere. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful affair. And then we continued to do that, And so we are still having our little jazz picnic.
And I was going to talk about that with you.
Well,
ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, these two marvelous people, in the month of August,
the third Sunday. Always the third Sunday. Rain or shine.
Rain or shine. They invite the entire tri-state area to come to their home, and they feed everyone. It's great jazz. It's just a heck of a jazz picnic at the Flemings. I've been there several times since I've been here in 2009. And in fact, meeting you at your home the first time
Right.
at that jazz picnic was still one of my most memorable moments here in Wilmington, Delaware.
Great. Good.
Well, now, coming up October 29th,
29th.
the council is going to pay tribute to Boise Lowry, and it's going to be done with a musical tribute. There's going to be a lot of great musicians, and it's going to happen at the Delaware School of Music
Correct.
here in Wilmington, Delaware. Tickets are available now, folks. They're $40, and you can get your ticket. You can call me at the Blackwell Solution. I'll give the number before the show is over, and make sure that you get your tickets to come and see this wonderful tribute to such a wonderful man.
That's right.
It's
Now-
going to be a great affair. I
Yes,
tell you
it
that.
is. Now, coming up pretty soon, we're going to chat with some of the musicians who are going to be performing. And I'm going to have you come back a little bit later toward the end of the show. And we're going to have a big discussion as we talk about this tribute to Boise Lowry, okay?
Okay.
fine,
Very
All
good.
right, Mrs. Fleming. And thank you guys for being back on. This is about your
Oh.
third time.
Hey, thank you for having
Thanks
me.
for having
You
us.
guys make some great co-hosts. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. and Mrs. Fleming here on Jazz on My Mind. All right, stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Coming up next, and thank you, Mrs. Fleming. Coming up, we're going to chat with a young man who is going to be doing some saxophone playing on this musical tribute to Boise Lowry. We're going to be chatting with the one and only Mr. Larry Unthank, saxophone great. But first, I want you to get your pen and paper ready, because coming up next, we've got This Week in Jazz for the West Coast. So let's see what's happening this week in jazz. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, on the West Coast, let's begin with the world stage. There's always some good, exciting jazz happening and some live performances. All you got to do is check out the world stage. They're located at 4344 Degnam Street in Los Angeles. For event times and information, just call area code 323-293-2451. Once again, that's the World Stage in Los Angeles. Their address, 4344 Degman in LA. And there's always some hot new jazz happening at one of LA's newest spots. And it's called NOLA. That's where you can get some great jazz with a taste of New Orleans. They're located at 734 East 3rd in LA. For jazz events and jazz info, you can call NOLA at area code 213-680-3003. And for some more great jazz in LA, there's always something happening at the Catalina Bar and Grill. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Catalina Bar and Grill is located at 6725 Sunset Boulevard in LA. To find out what's happening this week specifically, all you got to do is call the Catalina Bar and Grill at area code 323-466-2210. Once again, that's the Catalina Bar and Grill. And ladies and gentlemen, all of you great viewers in the Midwest, Cleveland, Ohio has an excellent spot for jazz, and it's called Nighttown. They're located at 12387 Cedar Road. You can call Nighttown at area code 216, and the number is 795-0550. And if you're in Chicago, you can check out the spot called the Green Mill Cocktail Lounge. They've got some great straight-ahead jazz, and they're located at 4802 North Broadway. Call them at area code 773-878-5552. And St. Louis, Missouri has a wonderful spot, and it's called Jazz at the Bistro. Their address is 3536 Washington Avenue in St. Louis. For more information, just log on to their website, which is jazzatthebistro.com. And don't forget, as always, if you want to know what's happening in jazz from coast to coast, just log on to our website, which is jazzonmymind.com. Keep that pen and paper handy because coming up next, I've got this week's jazz events for the East Coast. But right now, I want you to welcome my good friend, saxophone great, Mr. Larry Unthank, to Jazz
Richard, how are you?
on My Mind. Let's give him a big round of applause. Larry, good to see you. Come on over here. Now, you know, you are a veteran on the show. You've been here on the show quite a few times, and it's always good to see you. You give us a lot of good insight about jazz music and about what's happening about town. Now, I know that you're going to be performing at the Boise Lowry Tribute coming up October 29th. In fact, the show is going to be called It's All About Boise.
Which it is.
Yeah. Now, I talked to the Flemings a few minutes ago, and I was asking them, do you think this is overdue? Do you think this should have been done for Boise a long time ago?
Oh, this is way overdue. One of the problems is that Boise is such a humble individual, and very, well, he was a humble individual. He didn't look for a lot of accolades. At the time when people from all over Europe were marveling at Clifford Brown and the other American students that he was teaching, he was very, very humble. He could have had a banner placed on top of his house saying, it's all, you know, this is me.
Yeah.
Because it really was about him.
Yeah.
And his unique style of improvisation. And on one of the previous shows, Dexter, his nephew, was on the show. And one of the things that I was learning from him was a process called the classes. And for years, anybody that had to deal with it struggled with it, understanding, like Mr. Fleming was saying. You might not understand it like now, but 50 years later, you understand.
Now, Boise, and you mentioned that Clifford Brown was one of the students. His majors. There's so many, many others. When you think about the people that Boise taught, studied under his tutelage, you got to think about Gerald Chavis, who's with his own group now called Point Blank, which is world renowned.
Oh yeah, Tony Smith.
Faustina Dixon.
There's a multitude of people that passed through with Boise, and it changed my life. It gave me a whole bunch of different aspects. But one of the things I wanted to mention about Boise wasn't about jazz specifically. And when Mr. Fleming was telling his story about his daughters, one with violin, one with clarinet, when I met Boise for the first time, I ran into some guys that I hadn't seen in years that I used to play with. 3 years later, I ran into them, and they were playing this incredible Chick Corea music. And 3 years later, we were playing Wilson Pickett. So it was Boise didn't take you to make you a jazz player. Boise took you, as Mr. Fleming said, to kind of custom craft your individual lesson. When I first met him, he told me to come back the next day. I came back the next day. Your daughter might have been there. She was a clarinet player in the corner, a violin player in the other corner, an older guy with a guitar, a guy in a banjo in the corner. And he asked me, he said, do you know the C major scale? And I said, yeah. He said, okay, well, you sit over there and you play the C major scale. And I came back the next day and the next day and the next day, and that's all I played for 2 weeks, the C major scale, till I could play it so well that I didn't have to think that it was C. So he was able to figure out, without being offensive or degenerating, because at the time I had been on the road. I'd been on the road.
Because you were doing your R&B thing.
Yeah, I was working with several different groups at the time. But I didn't know an eighth note from a G clef. he made it happen like real quick. Like the other point is that most of us in my age group, there were the guys from Maurice's generation and the generation before that, who were the guys that went to school with and lived around the corner with and lived in this town with Clifford Brown and a multitude of other musicians, the Winchesters. So it wasn't about, oh, you're jazz now, because it takes a process. You know, the most important thing to me was that he taught me how to play the blues. Duh.
Yeah.
And once you do that, and you understand that, then all that other stuff, jazz, you can call it jazz, you can call it whatever you want, but it's all the same stuff.
I remember when you were on 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about the pitch.
Right.
And you mentioned that Boise taught with an absolute
Well, yeah.
pitch. Explain that, if you can. Explain
Well,
that a little.
some guys just, it's a knack. It's a God-given thing where you can hear a note, you can hear a car horn or a bus horn, and they know what note it is. But sometimes car horns and bus horns have two horns, and they cross pattern and they make a note. They can tell you what both notes are. But Boise had absolute pitch. Perfect pitch is different from absolute pitch. Absolute is that he could tell you what note, no matter what. Another guy has that. Larry Williams, that's from this town. He also has that. So it's a rare thing, but obviously it's good.
That's beautiful.
When you're trying to teach somebody.
Now, you're going to be one of the musicians performing
Yes.
in the tribute to Boise. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, October 29th, here in Wilmington, Delaware, at the Delaware Music School. You're going to be performing with a trumpet player
Right. Saeed.
and his son.
No, his son's not going to be on the
It's
job.
just Saeed, just
It's
your
going
dad.
to be Saeed
Okay.
and myself. Kenny Gates on piano, Wayne Morgan on drum, and I think Eddie Harris on bass.
Right.
And we've got like a 15-minute spot. We're going to do a couple instrumentals, and I'm going to sing a ballad, Johnny Mercer, excuse me,
That's okay.
of Johnny Mercer ballad.
Saeed is a outstanding trumpet player. He's also studied under the tutelage of Boise,
Yep,
and he's going to be here performing next week.
next week.
He's going to be here with his son, who is an outstanding trumpet
Yeah,
player.
he's really coming along.
Yeah. And
Well-
you had a lot. You had some things to do with that, because I understand that speaking to Saeed, he said his son really gravitated to you. You are his mentor as far as breaking that personality, because these youngsters, when they're learning how to play an instrument, they're a little introverted. But you understand are helping him with that
Well,
and helping him.
they're a lot introverted
Yeah.
because they don't recognize that this is show business.
Yeah.
This is a performance. This is you at your A game. I've been doing this professionally since I was a teenager, and all along the way at every stop, I've been on the road with R&B bands. I was on the road with Charles Earlin.
Great keyboard.
Yeah, great organist.
Yeah.
The Mighty Burner.
The Mighty Brother. My man.
Yeah. Loud. Whoa. But it's about molding that musician to figure out where he's comfortable. Because everybody's not comfortable with being high.
Yeah.
Here I am, look at me. But that's the major thing you got to get over. If you're going to be a performer, you're going to have people do that
Yeah.
and say, hey, that was pretty good. So if you think that you're good enough to do it, and you're working at doing it, and there's an opportunity for you to get better at it, you have to realize that I am in show business, whether it's one person or 1,000 people.
You're
that you're
performing.
an
You're doing your thing.
You're an entertainer.
That's
Your
right.
job is to make them say, wow, I really like that.
Well, you do that, and you do that extremely well, because you are an outstanding saxophonist. I've had the pleasure of seeing you perform.
Well, I've heard different sometimes.
No, but you do your thing, and you do it extremely well.
Thank you, Richard.
And once again, the audience, I want to encourage you to come down to Wilmington, Delaware, and be at the All About Boise Music Tribute, which is happening October 29th here in Wilmington, Delaware. Now, I want you to do me a favor.
Sure.
I want you to stick around.
Okay.
Don't go anywhere, because coming up next, we're going to talk to a former radio personality here, jazz DJ, Mr. Maurice Sims.
One of my favorite people in the world.
That's why I want you to stay here while we chat together. Don't go anywhere.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Larry Unfang on Jazz on My Mind. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Coming up pretty soon, we're going to check out an outstanding video, one that you requested to see again, the one by my man Vince Lanier. We're going to be showing that for you again in just a little bit. But before we do that, I want to talk about something that's going to be happening real soon, and it's called the October 29th All About Boise program. We want you to come on out, check it out, be a part of that show, because it's going to be an absolute outstanding night of jazz. Some of the greatest jazz musicians in the area and from around the world are going to be here just to perform in Boise's name. So don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, October 29th here in Wilmington, Delaware. You can get your tickets now. You can call my line personally, the Blackwell Solution. You can call, the number is area code 302-428-1964. I'll give you that number one more time. 302-428-1964. You can call that number for tickets. Also, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you about an outstanding restaurant for Caribbean food, and it's called the Paradise Palms. This is where we broadcast our show from every Wednesday night, and it's located at 901 North King Street in downtown Wilmington, Delaware. Now, I want to tell you about this place because the food here is so good. And that's all because the head chef, Mr. Wendell, prepares his dishes with the love of Jamaica. Dishes like jerk chicken, baked fish, greens, cabbage, red beans and rice, and so much more. So when your taste buds say Caribbean, it's got to be the Paradise Palms. You can call them at area code 302, and the number is 377-2528. Or you can log on to the website, which is theparadisepalms.com. Once again, Paradise Palms. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to welcome the one and only former radio personality here in Wilmington, Delaware, Mr. Maurice Sims, to Jazz on My Mind.
Hi, Richard.
How you doing? Hold that mic up there, Maurice. Good to see you, Maurice.
Okay.
You know, I'm so glad that you were able to come on the show, because you are an influential person in jazz here in this area. Seeing you just warms my heart, because you are so full of wonderful jazz information. What have you been doing with yourself? Tell the audience what you've been doing.
I'm studying with Judith Kay. I'm still working on theory and harmony. I started with Boise Larry. I would like to write a show, musical show.
Yeah.
But you have to have so much background.
Yeah.
Been working at it for years. But among this, you'll see that I was a student of Boise Larry. It wasn't so much for instrumental, but just for theory and harmony.
Right.
Really learned his system. His system's a secret, It's
Yeah.
a family secret. Boise was playing trumpet by ear for a long time. Then he came back, and his brother Bud came and picked him up. His father sent for him. His father had a 40-piece orchestra, and his brother Bud had a 17-piece orchestra. They brought him back and taught him the system. And his two sisters were school teachers, so he decided he wanted to teach because of his family background. Great family he came from, of educators. I think of his name, if you'd call him instead of just Boise, Dr. Robert Allen Lowry, it would reverberate more with the public. But he was past the doctors. You had to have when you finish Berkeley and Juilliard and got enough information, enough skills, then you come see Boise.
What do you think about that, Larry? Is that true?
That's pretty much true. Although he spent a whole lot more time with Boise that I did.
Oh yeah.
I had about 2 years with him, and obviously it wasn't enough.
I started in Boise in '64.
Well, let's talk about your career.
Oh, my career.
Yeah, let's talk.
That's why I tried to bring that stuff to put it back in my head.
But we'll get to.
When I had the radio show, there's a newspaper edition of what time it was, and the Maury Sims show. That was with WTUX. Well, Mitch Thomas started down at WDOV in Dover, and he really initiated this whole effort. In fact, he was the third black in radio to have his own show.
Okay.
That makes Mitch Thomas, that makes me fourth because I followed him.
Yeah.
He had to go to the Korean conflict, and Sonny Johnson, a friend of mine, and Mitch came every day to beg me to take over the show so we wouldn't lose this black venue on the radio. And everybody loved all the show. I refused for about 2 weeks, and so they finally worked me down. But see, I'm a microbiologist by training, and I had been accepted down to Johns Hopkins in the medical school down there to further my education in that venue.
Okay.
But I said, okay, I'll give in. Just 2 years? They said, yeah, he'll be back in 2 years. So I took over that show, and I got hooked on it. So
me being a radio person myself,
right?
How did you start in the radio? What did you always want to be?
No, I always wanted to be a medical microbiologist. But I was telling Larry before, I don't think anyone in the history of mankind loves jazz more than I do.
That's why I wanted you to be on the show.
Okay. It started when I was 9 years old. My oldest brother in Wilmington was the venue for all the big bands. They came and played the dances up the Oddfellows Temple. I lived a block from there, and I could raise my back bedroom window and hear all the orchestra all the time.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah, but I was a little boy. And so my oldest brother came in the bedroom and got me one time and dressed me and took me around on Orange Street side of the Oddfellows Temple. And no air conditioning, the windows were open. He put me on his shoulder and pushed me up to the window. So my first experience with jazz was Lester Young playing tenor saxophone with Count Basie at 9 years old.
That was
what
an
first
experience.
On Orange Street. I lived at 13th and Tattler.
Yeah.
And it went through me. It's still there.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
that's a heck of a story.
It is. And Lester Young is still my favorite, too. Can't get away from the press.
Now, you are playing a part in the Boise Tribute coming up on October 29th. Mm-hmm. You're going to be the person who opens the show up.
Oh, I hope so. I have so many stories to tell you.
And
there's always been such a great positive attitude towards Robert Allen Lowry. Robert Allen Lowry, that's what we like to call him, Mr. Morris and I. So this coming would be a real treat for me to introduce how I knew him from the inside out, because we were friends. His wife was my classmate, high school classmate.
And I heard a lot of good things about her.
Oh, yeah. Well. She's the one who started me with doing Dunbar poetry. I do dialect poetry in the old dialect, pre-1900 I do, and also do poems by Langston Hughes, too. I do one-man shows. Larry was my musical setup for that. We had good fun there. Remember?
Maurice has got 2 or 3 plays that I know of.
Right.
Yeah.
I know of.
Okay.
One.
Sisterella.
Sisterella.
That's the one. I'm still working on Sisterella.
I'm still trying.
That's why.
Tell us about that. Tell the audience about that.
Well, it is one hell of a play written by him based on Cinderella.
But it takes place, Sisterella, and it takes place in Harlem, New York. I lived in New York.
When did you come up with this idea?
That was in the 60s, and that's why I said I have to know a lot of knowledge about writing and music, basically, in order to pull this off.
Yeah.
And Larry was one of the first people I came to sing for that. It's a story of this Sisterella. It was Obie's restaurant, everybody's famous restaurant in New York on 135th Street called Obie's. Everybody after always ended up at Obie's. And so the theme came, if I had the evil stepmother and the girls, the 2 daughters, and then Sisterella working back in the kitchen, I got me a show, see, like that. And that's how that started. I still have it like that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you're still performing it, huh?
No, I haven't performed really since that card there.
Yeah.
I just done a lot of local shows. You know,
Yeah,
I've been
yeah.
on every stage in Delaware, in Wilmington, around here.
Well, when did you and Larry meet? Do you remember when you
I
met
know
Larry?
Larry since a little boy. I knew his
What?
mother and father.
Really?
I didn't know his father that well. That's a lie. I knew his mother quite well. Down in Buttonwood Avenue. Down in Buttonwood Avenue. I know him all of his life.
Well-
and like I say, Bob Fleming, my aunt's backyard was into his backyard. He's on Howland Street, my aunt's on 8th Street. And all these years, and they were all real mulatto type people. And Bobby never realized they were my first cousins and my father's sister around here until later on. And I knew Bob Fleming and his mother and all them. Very beautiful people.
Yes,
always.
yeah. Well, this is really an amazing thing because one thing about this show, it's all about jazz, but
Right.
it's also about the people behind jazz. And you two, along with the Flemings and everyone else who's going to be paying tribute to Boise Lowry, it's all about jazz. It's all about
jazz.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you picked up on it that Wilmington is the jazz center.
I thought
See?
I was calling it that on my
Oh,
own.
well, all my life I've said it because you know I've traveled all around. I was in the Navy and went around. See, Chicago is not a jazz center. New
No.
York either. The people went there.
Yes.
But Kansas City and New Orleans and Wilmington, Delaware,
Definitely.
were really the seat.
Right.
And before you went to New York, you had to stop in
But
Wilmington.
that's what I heard.
Oh yeah, you had to
The greats
you had
like
your
Dizzy
tryout.
Gillespie.
Yeah, all of
All of
everybody.
those guys
Stan
stopped
Getz, I
here.
spent a week with Stan Getz down in Lester Young, down to Baby Grand, right down this hill, right down this street there.
Yeah.
He was down there a week. Little Jimmy Scott. Well, see, I had once Little Jimmy Scott was appearing, and on a Saturday, no one showed up, or his group showed up. So I said, wait, I got a guy. I ran down the street and got Clifford Brown, and Clifford came up and played piano for him. People didn't know Clifford could play the
Oh, my
piano.
goodness.
And Stan Getz blew horn and them Winchester on vibes. I don't have that either. I wish I had taped that.
Yeah,
Like
that would have been something,
Little
especially
Jimmy Scott.
with Lynn Winchester.
There
Well,
was a
especially
lot
with
of that
Clifford.
going on.
Clifford was 18 then.
Mhm.
Yeah, he was about 8. He was born in 1930. He was about 18. I met Clifford when he was 13, and then he was 16 years old. His brother and I were classmates at Lake University for 4 years, and Eugene, and he was always bragging about this younger brother. And he was paying his way through Maryland State College down there, and he was sending the money orders off. So I was in the room up in Crescent Hall. You know, he said, home, I keep sending my baby brother this money to make him stay in the school. But they tell me he's out on the road playing that trumpet all the time. So he and Len Foster, Dee Dee, would always go to Akron, Ohio for a special gig like that. So I said, let me go by and check him out. So I went by the house down there at 1013. I knew all of his brothers, Harold, Leon, Ellsworth, knew his sister Geneva, all of them. So just friends and family in and out. So Clifford was sitting playing the piano when I went in there.
Wow.
So I said, hey, Clifford, your brother told me you got that trumpet together about now. He said, So he was blowing out of the R band book. All the musicians know R bands. It's the greatest teaching book for trumpet or saxophone, anything like that.
Okay.
So I opened the book, and I'd never forget it. I turned to lesson 243. So
Okay.
I said, can you cut that? He said, I said, Eugene, take your brother out of country school and let him get on going.
Let him go on tour.
Let him go on.
Now, with you right now, Maurice, you have a plaque.
Yeah.
And we're going to see if we can zoom in on this because
That's
this
from-
plaque
that's
was
from
given
Bob
to you.
Fleming.
Tell us about this plaque. What is
Well,
this
this
about?
Bob Fleming knows me all my life, and I know Bob all his life. And he knows that I've been right in the center of jazz in here in Wilmington all of our lives.
Mhm.
And when I do radio shows, I still do the show where you call me on. When I do shows, I never read liner notes. You know,
Right,
I
right.
don't look at the records. I just use my recollection.
And that's
of
a
that
beautiful thing.
and flow from there. And so, as a consequence of that type of his observing me, he decided I should be
Receive this. huh?
Receive
And
that.
this is talks about that you are a multi-talented individual. For years has been the person to ask anything concerning jazz. He's always been willing to share his vast knowledge with anyone who is serious about the music.
Like
Now, that's
Richard
deep.
Blackwell.
Well, to me, this is a blessing to be here. You can take your plaque and hold on
Okay,
to that
thanks.
with your life. It's a blessing to be here, to be able to chat with you, Maurice, Mr. Sims, and Larry Unthank, and the Flemings. It's a wonderful thing for me because I've only been here 2 years. I got a crash course. You know, I can whip some stuff out now.
There's more to come.
Yeah, there's more to come. I can whip some things out now because it's all here. What you guys have given me. And I'm hoping to carry that knowledge on. You know, just like the music. Somebody's got to make sure that it is preserved. We got to make sure the music is preserved. We got to make sure the history and the culture is preserved. So I thank God for being
I'm
here.
getting ready to say, I knew that word was coming. That's why I love Richard, because he knows the source
It
of
comes
all
from
of
God.
it.
And you know, when I first met Maurice always has a smile. He's always got a lot of energy. Wonderful person to talk to. And I'm telling you, it's a blessing. I don't know why it took so long to get you on this show.
I don't. I'm an introvert, basically.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I study a lot.
Well, I'm going to try to get some more information
He's
since
got-
we're hooked up.
He wants my stuff too.
He's got a bunch of stuff.
I
So I'm gonna kidnap
got
you,
pictures of
go to
Clifford
Kinko's.
blowing in the baby grand.
Well, we're going to have to try to hook some of those photos up and get you back.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to get you back on where we can talk about Clifford Brown and all those experiences.
Well, you can
that
talk
had.
to my agent. We'll see how you work.
He's gone Hollywood on me,
Yeah,
folks.
work
Ladies
out.
and gentlemen, former radio, you're going to stick around because when we come back, we're going to show a video from Vince Ledere. When we come back, we all going to sit here with the Flemings and we're going to have some laughs.
I used to see Vince out in Philly up north.
Vince Ledere.
Yeah, but I thought he was from Philly till I went to Galuccia's. Remember the night I
Yes,
met you over
I saw you.
Galuccia?
Man, that was when I first got here.
First time you saw me with
2009.
Alfie and Dexter. Well, they
Introduce me
lived
to-
with my mother up there for 2 years, so I know them well.
Wow. It's a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, stick around, Maurice.
Okay.
Mr. Maurice Sims here on Jazz on My Mind. And he's going to come right back as we talk to all of our guests right after we take care of some business. And the business at hand right now is this week jazz events for the East Coast. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have that pen and paper handy because we're going to talk about some things coming up this week in jazz. Let's start with tomorrow night. It's the Thursday night jazz party happening at my spot. It's called the Basil Bar and Grill, located at 422 Delaware Avenue in Wilmington, Delaware. Now this week, the Basil will feature music by Destiny Band. The jazz party begins at 8 p.m. and as I said, is hosted by yours truly. So come on down if you're in the tri-state area to Basil Bar and Grill inside the Sheraton Hotel at 422 Delaware Avenue, right here in the place which we call the one and only, the only place for jazz. Right here in Wilmington, Delaware. All right. Also, ladies and gentlemen, every Friday and Saturday, it's jazz at its finest at the Nomad Jazz Bar, located at 905 North Orange in Wilmington, Delaware. Now, you can find out what's going on at the Nomad by calling area code 302-655-8800. It's the hot new jazz club here in Wilmington, Delaware. Once again, call them at area code 302-655-8800. And every Sunday, and each Sunday, it's the world famous Jazz Brunch at Warm Daddy's, located at 1400 Columbus Avenue in Philadelphia. Now the food at Warm Daddy's is always delicious, and the music is out of sight. You can call Warm Daddy's at area code 215-462-2000. That number again, area code 215 and the number 462-2000. And if you want to listen to some great jazz on the radio, every Monday morning at 2 a.m., my good friend Farnay is on WPFW, which is 89.3 FM out of Washington, D.C. Now, Farnay plays the best straight-ahead jazz, and the good thing about it is you can listen to her anywhere around the world. Just log on to WPFW.org. That's Farnay on the radio, 2 o'clock every Monday morning. And if you want some jazz Monday nights, Well, the Tony Williams Monday Night Jazz Jam Session happens at the La Rose Social Club. Their address, 5531 Germantown Avenue in Philadelphia. Showtimes are 6 until 11 p.m. And gotta tell you that Atlanta, Georgia has a hot jazz spot, and it's called Cafe 290. And every Sunday, they have their Sunday night All-Star Jam session. You can call area code 404 and the number 256-3942. Once again, that's Cafe 290 in Atlanta. Last but certainly not least, the Big Apple has one of the hottest spots for jazz, and it's called the Town Hall Jazz Club. And they're located at 131 West 3rd in New York. Call them at area code 212-475-8592. Once again, that's the Town Hall Jazz Club. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, for all the jazz events from Los Angeles to New York, just log on to our jazz website, which is jazzonmymind.com. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, I played this video 2 weeks ago, and I have got nothing but emails and phone calls regarding this video. I'm going to set it up for you real quickly. It's Vince LaDear and his quartet. And in fact, they're playing at Galluccio's, the place that Maurice Sims was just talking about, place here in Wilmington, which is also a great spot for jazz. Now performing with Vince LaDear and his quartet, on drums, the one and only Mr. Tom Coughlin. On bass, it's Tom Palmer. On bass, it's Bob Culligan. On vibes, it's Tony Maselli. Yeah. And on saxophone, it's the man himself, Mr. Vince LaDear. Ladies and gentlemen, here's the Vince LaDear Quartet, and they're performing a song called The End of a Love Affair on Jazz on My Mind.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Vince LeDeer and his quartet. Wasn't that some outstanding jazz?
Tremendous.
Yeah,
tremendous.
I like
Very
that.
Good.
Tony Maselli on drums, on the vibes, and Tom Palmer on drums, and Bob Culligan on bass, and Vince LeDeer on the sax. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome back Mr. and Mrs. Fleming from the Council of Jazz Advocates, also my main man, former radio disc jockey here, Mr. Maurice Sims, and my co-host in so many terms, Mr. Larry Unthang. Welcome all of you back. Well, we got the big show coming up October 29th. Mr. Fleming, go ahead and invite all of our viewers on out to watch it.
I certainly would like to do that. We're featuring, the show is all about Boise, and that's exactly what it is, all about Boise.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the performers who are going to play were taught by Boise or influenced in some way. We're going to have, I'm going to see if I can name as many as I can. Oh, we're going to have Larry Unthank, Tony Smith, Ronnie Smith, Wayne Morgan,
Yeah.
Dennis Fortune,
Yeah.
Gerald Chavis. I'm not sure about Gerald. If Gerald's in town, he'll be there.
Right.
Let me see, Saheed, on
Kenny
Trump,
Gates.
Kenny Gates out of
Wayne Morgan.
Philadelphia, Wayne Morgan, the drummer. We're having
So we got some great vocalists.
DeVoe Tompkins. We have vocalist Sharon Moore, who incidentally is my cousin. Sylvia Jenkins, another fine vocalist.
Mm-hmm.
And we had another one in mind, but she's unavailable. It's Barbara Yates.
Wow.
Unfortunately, she won't be able to be here, but she's a fine vocalist too. And as I say, we have many artists, most of you guys and ladies who were taught by Boise.
Yeah.
And the whole theme is it's all about Boise.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Sims, you're going to be there as well. I didn't mention, ladies and gentlemen, I'm the master of ceremonies for this wonderful event, and I believe you're going to bring me on stage.
I'm going to bring you on. I have that already set up.
And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, I couldn't be introduced to the audience by such a finer gentleman than Mr. Maurice Sims.
Oh, thank you. Anyone who doesn't come, I'm going to be angry with. That's all I can say that. We'll all be there.
And Mr. Larry Unthank, you're going to be performing and doing your thing on your saxophone.
I'm going to try to be on my A game.
And I'm happy and proud to be a part of the celebration.
Yeah.
Right.
And once again, ladies and gentlemen, that's happening October 29th, which is a Saturday night. The show time is 7 p.m., and it happens at the Delaware Music School.
Wilmington Music School.
And used to be the
Wilmington used to be,
Yeah, and the address is 4101
Washington Street at Lee Boulevard, right?
Yeah.
Everybody come. Y'all come.
Yeah.
Now, the purpose is that we give $500 scholarship money to students that go to college and further their music and education. So this is what we're all about, Council of Jazz Advocates.
Yeah, and ladies and gentlemen, we invite each and every one of you to come on down, see this tremendous gathering of some of the finest musicians you will ever hear. And I'm telling you, the Council of Jazz Advocates, my hat goes off to your organization for what you're doing, because last year you celebrated the life by doing the 80th birthday celebration of Mr. Clifford Brown.
Clifford Brown, that's right.
And this year you're going to celebrate the life of the man who's taught
Clifford Brown.
Clifford Brown, along with Wilby Fletcher Jr.
Right.
When you talk about people who studied under Boise, have I been doing?
Yes, you have.
Have I been doing?
Yes, you have. You had. Yeah.
I would like to compliment Richard Blackwell for his effort in our town and keeping this thing alive.
I mean, it's amazing that I've gotten to know everyone. But Boise taught Wilby Fletcher Jr., who unfortunately passed a little over a year ago. But his memory is still strong in this wonderful, wonderful city, the capital of jazz, Wilmington, Delaware.
You know, I would like to mention one outstanding artist also that Boise taught from Wilmington. He's passed away now, Charlie Robinson. Anybody who was anybody in music would know Charlie. And quiet guy. I was just listening to Larry talk about being a performer and entertainer. You have to kind of project yourself. Charlie was, I guess, he was just the opposite. He was cool, laid back. If you think about Dexter Gordon,
Yeah.
you got Charlie Robinson.
Can I add to that? I once asked Boise who was his favorite student. Was it Clifford? He said, no, it's Charlie Robinson.
Really?
He brought me all my lessons every week.
Well, I want to thank you folks for being on the show. Larry, I want you to come back next week because, ladies and gentlemen, next week be sure to join us because we're going to have a very special jazz performance from trumpeter Saeed Mbue and his son, Saeed Jr., the young man we were talking about. That's going to be a fantastic live jazz performance next week. And also, I'm going to have for you an video interview of one of our very first Jazz on My Mind interview clips, and it's with Latin great Puncho Sanchez. I'm going to have my interview with Puncho Sanchez next week along with Saeed Mbue. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Mrs. Fleming, Mr. Fleming from the Council of Jazz Advocates, former radio great Mr. Maurice Sims, and saxophonist my man Larry Unthank. I'm Richard Blackwell. I want to thank our crew tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank Shellyn, our floor manager. I want to thank Vincent, our director. I want to thank my man Bernard, our camera operator, and Ashley, also on camera. I'm Richard Blackwell, and we want to thank you for watching Jazz on My Mind.